It's Bucky themed. We're doing a whole Bucky theme. Woo! Hey, beautiful people. Welcome back to another episode of Bar Talk. Today we are talking first rides. As a cult starter, this is one of the biggest topics. In the last couple episodes, we hit trailer loading, round penning, and now first rides. So we're just knocking the big ones out right away. First rides, in my opinion, are, depending on the horse, depending on what their job is, could be the most important session of that horse's life. Just because it's the most important session does not mean that it has to be a big production. You don't have to put a lot of stress onto it. It's, in all reality, the easier and simpler and quicker you can get things done, the better it is going to be in the long run. Now, that being said, I don't think you should be dicking around with first sits and doing, getting up on that horse bareback before it's ready and doing all that stuff I see on Facebook all the time. Honestly, all of that stuff is just super time consuming. It's dangerous. You can get into trouble. You can set your horse back. Now, if you want to do that stuff, make sure you have the right horse for it. Make sure that, you're ready, you're prepared. Make sure you're not going to get hurt. Make sure you have someone around if you're doing that gaucho bareback stuff. Now, I do some of that on very specific horses for very specific reasons, but I don't make a habit out of starting my horses that way. There's a lot of variables that come into play that things can get dicey really quick. Now, that's with the bareback stuff. With the first sits, I think first sits are bad. Fundamentally, as an idea, as a concept, I disagree with the idea of a first sit. It's just a stupid milestone that someone came up with, probably to post on Facebook to be like, oh, look, I'm sitting on my horse, for the first time. But it's dumb. It's not a smart thing to be doing. In a first sit, there is no motion. It's kind of a climb on, climb off sort of deal. And really, you teach your horse to stand still. You teach your horse to deal with all this new stuff happening and just internalize it. And like we talked about in the trailer loading video, you don't want that horse to be internalizing. You want that horse to express itself and be free and open and move around and get out what it needs to get out. And when you're climbing up on that horse to do a first sit and you don't want it to move, you want it to stand perfectly still, you want to get up on there, get off, you've just taught your horse that as long as it bottles up its emotions, stays quiet, doesn't move a muscle, it'll just get turned out. And then you go to ride that horse and you're going to have a sticky horse. You're going to have a bad situation. He's not going to want to move forward because you've already put a session into him that's told him don't move. So now when you go to that first ride and the next, 50, 60 rides you put on that horse, it's all about forward. It's all about moving forward and having motion. Well, you have just taught that horse that it shouldn't move. Right. And that's where it comes to is that Facebook picture cool? Some would argue yes. But why would you want to put yourself in a training situation where you're going backwards a lot of steps just to get that, interaction on social media? I disagree with it. I don't like it. I think it's dumb. I think we got to stop doing first sits. Just don't do them. I don't like them. Another thing that I don't like, and if you can tell, I'm passionate about first rides. I've done a lot of them. I love doing them. It's a big part of my job. But what I don't like, and I see it again, and it's that Facebook stuff, and you see it over and over and over, and that is doing a first ride on a lead line and having someone hold your horse on a lead line while you're riding that horse for the first time. Couple things. Okay. First of all, I can't come up with a good reason to do that. I can't come up with a good reason that anyone would come up with that idea. You're not going to be able to pull that horse around. And if you do, if you can get that horse off of a bucking path, it's going to swing its hip. And riding as many, bucking horses as I have, I can tell you that swinging the hip is one of the dirtiest moves a horse can do when it's bucking. That is a hard thing to ride. So if you are not confident enough to ride without someone holding that horse on a lead line, I don't think you're probably a good enough rider to be riding the maneuver that lead line is going to, do to your horse. Anyway, you can't outpull it. You can't, a horse that's going into a bucking fit, you cannot outpull. It's not going to happen. I don't care how much you bench, you're not going to be able to do it. And finally, and this is what it comes down to, if you need someone to hold that horse while you ride it for the first time, have that conversation. And I've talked about this, and I'll continue talking about this. Have that conversation with yourself. Am I ready to ride a colt? If you are ready to ride a colt, absolutely go out there and do it, but do it the right way. If you're not ready to ride a colt and you feel like you need someone to restrain that horse as you do the first ride on it, you really have to have that conversation with yourself. There are people out there that will start your colt for you. Probably not for free. There's some cheap guys that'll do it. There's some expensive guys that'll do it. Someone will be there to start a colt for you if you don't want to be starting that colt. So don't feel like you ever have to. And another big thing is you have to take the ego out of it. You really, really have to take the ego out of it. Somebody, oh, I want to start my own horse. I want to build this horse from the ground up. Okay, you are more than allowed to do that. I'm not going to sit here and tell you you can't do this, that, and the other thing on your own horse. Do whatever you want on your own horse. But what I am saying is there are huge issues you can avoid if it's a confidence thing, if it's a skill thing. Send it off. Have someone else do it. Okay. we got to move on. I talked more than I should have about things not to do, but that's not why y'all are here. You guys want to know what to do and how I do things. So let's talk a little bit about how I go about a first ride. And we have that video up. You can watch Nova's first ride. There's so many variables that go into a first ride, but I have 4 goals. When I go into a first ride, I have 4 goals. Number 1, mount that horse when she's in a position of relaxation and acceptance. And the way I go about that most of the time is working that hip. I'll put my foot in the stirrup, move the hip, take my foot out of the stirrup, put my foot in the stirrup, put some weight in it, move the hip, and just work my way until I'm able to swing a leg and I know her hips are in motion. And then from that onto the second goal is we turn that hip movement into a forward walk. And that horse is kind of in motion the whole time. Right? There's breaks in there. There's breaks where we let her sit and relax, but it's a continuous flow of motion that you want on that horse. In that first session, she's really, it's about accepting the rider and it's about moving the hip. And those are the only 2 things we're actually really teaching. So once you got that hip moving, standing on the side of that saddle, swing a leg, drop your heel back, she should move that hip and just spiral that into forward movement. And once she gets forward in the round pen, beautiful, beautiful invention, that round pen, they're going to suck to that rail and you're going to start being able to work. Now, once you have the mounting and you have a walk, those are my first 2 goals. Now I need the trot. So all I'm going to do in the trot is I'm just going to increase pressure. And there's a lot of different ways you can do it depending on the horse and depending on your skill level and depending on what you even have available. Some things that I use is I use my over-under. I love my over-under. It's my go-to, but if that isn't working and the horse isn't responsive to that, or maybe the horse is, a little too flighty for the over-under, I might use a dressage whip, I might use a flag. I might have a ground person with a flag or with a whip in their hand helping control that movement in the arena. But it's just about increasing the energy. So you tighten your seat a little bit, drive with your legs, and then use that tertiary cue when it's appropriate just to get that trot. And once you have that trot, go ahead, sit there for a while, rub on them. That's when you can start moving your hands around, shifting your seat. You can post a little bit, do those things. And once they're freed up and that horse is feeling really good, then just increase that energy a little bit more and try to get that canter. And that's my 4th goal. I don't want to ask for the canter. I don't want to cue for the canter. I don't want to say we're cantering right now. What I want to do is make it their choice. And that trot to canter transition, typically, I would say 85% of the time, if your horse is going to buck, it's going to be from the trot to canter transition. And people get so scared of it and people don't canter their horses for a long time because we all know that trot to canter transition is a scary one. But what I like to do is I like to trick them into it. So I'll increase that trot until they're really at a fast working trot and they're really working. And I'll increase that energy just a little more. And then you force them to make a decision there. Your horse goes, I can either continue to speed up my trot to evade this pressure, or I can break into a more relaxed gait, which is the lope. And you just keep turning up that pressure until they break into the lope and they choose to do it. And depending on, the caliber of horse I'm working with and what the horse is going to be capable of at the time, that's probably where I'll stop the ride, is just when they break into that canter. And because that trot to canter transition is such a dangerous one and it's such a scary one, and it's a really hard one for those horses to do under saddle for the first time, I'll stop there and give them a big release just taking that canter step. I'll pull the saddle, I'll lay on the ground with them for a little bit, and I'll come out tomorrow, and they already have in their heads that I want a canter. That canter was what got me out of here. And you have now bypassed, so many sessions of trying to get that canter, trying to evade the lope. I'm not worried that second ride if they're going to buck or not in that transition, because I've already set myself up for them to want that transition. And then the other thing, and watching the video back, I do kind of subconsciously touch the reins a little bit in that round pen. And I think I said in the last video that there's like no reason ever you should be steering in the arena and in a first ride. Couple times you could bump that rein in that first ride. Very few, but a couple times. Number one, if they go head on to a panel. And I've had a couple situations where I've had horses try to jump around pen while I've been on their back. So I'm very conscious of if they just bolt right towards a panel and they're about to go up, I might, cock their head off center a little bit. The other thing is if they keep getting sucked to one spot and they're getting kind of sour to one spot, I don't really want to dull out my tertiary cue. So that'd be my over under, my whip, my flag person. So what I might do if I don't have a ground person or, someone on the outside to add a little more pressure, I might just bump them off center a couple times. And I'm not steering. I'm not looking for like a perfect, move the shoulder. It's just a little bump off center to be like, hey, no, we got to keep working. We got to get some things done. And I do that because I want those first rides to be pretty quick. That first session can be, up to an hour and a half, I'd say. I don't have any problem working a horse for the first time up to an hour and a half. But that ride section, that first ride, I really think should be 15 to 20 minutes tops. And if you are struggling to get that horse to open up within 15 to 20 minutes, I struggle to say, get off, call it good. I would really push for that canter. But if you get into that situation, a smart thing to do might be to step off the horse and just get it to open up on the ground and then come back the next day and try again. But you can really burn out a horse. You can really dull out a horse. You can really get a horse in a shutdown spot that first ride. So I try to make them really quick. I try to get in, get out, do what I have to do, and then come back the next day, which is just a free up ride. So that second ride I do on them is just to free them up, get them moving. A lot of times with the colts I'm getting in now, I do that in the arena, and I'm only in that round pen for half a session, maybe one full session. But if I got one that's got a bucking issue, one that really wants to bolt, or really, really sensitive colt, I'll do that same exact kind of pattern of walk, trot, lope, get comfortable in those transitions before I add any sort of steering, any sort of stopping or backing, just getting them freed up in the round pen. Then I'll go ahead and get them freed up in the arena. And once they're in the arena, we can start messing with the steering, the backing. Okay, I talked for a while. Let's get out of here. This is Bar Talk episode 3. Peace.